The SS Marauder's edge cut through the morning fog like a blade, its black sails billowing as it approached the coastal retirement community of Sunset Haven. Captain Kendall stood at the helm, her weathered hands gripping the wheel with practiced ease. At 67, she was the youngest of her crew, a fact that would have surprised anyone who still believed pirates were young, swashbuckling adventurers rather than seasoned criminals who'd simply grown old in their trade. "Target acquired," growled her first mate, examining the peaceful building through a bronze spyglass. "Looks like easy pickings, Captain. Just a bunch of old folks having their morning tea." Kendall smirked. "Perfect. We'll be in and out before they finish their breakfast." Roman prepped the boarding party. Roman, a grizzled 72-year-old with more scars than teeth, barked orders to the crew. They'd been terrorizing coastal communities for months, targeting places they assumed would offer little resistance. Retirement homes, with their valuable medications and wealthy residents, had become their specialty. What Captain Kendall didn't know was that Sunset Haven wasn't an ordinary retirement home. It was a facility specifically designed for retired military personnel, intelligence operatives, and various government agents who'd spent their careers in the world's most dangerous professions. As the pirates stormed through the main entrance at 10:47 a.m., waving cutlasses and outdated pistols, they found the residents calmly seated in the common room. An elderly woman with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun continued knitting without looking up. "This is a robbery," Kendall announced dramatically. "Everyone stay calm, hand over your valuables, and nobody gets "Oh, for heaven's sake," interrupted the knitting woman, whose name tag read Dorothy, former CIA. "Roman, is that you? I thought you retired to Florida." Roman squinted at her. "Dorothy, from the Caracas operation in '89. The very same, still holding grudges." "I see." Dorothy set down her knitting needles with deliberate precision. "Martha dear, would you handle this? I'm in the middle of a complicated stitch." Before Roman could respond, a tiny woman with glasses emerged from the kitchen, wielding what appeared to be a rolling pin but moved with the grace of someone who'd spent decades mastering martial arts. Within seconds, two pirates were on the floor, groaning. "Sorry about the mess," Martha said cheerfully. "I was making cinnamon rolls." Kendall drew her sword, but her hand trembled not from fear, but from the early stages of arthritis she'd been ignoring for months. A retired Marine Corps colonel named George noticed immediately. "That's poor form," George commented, disarming her with a swift movement that belonged in a training manual. "You're compensating for joint pain. Should get that checked." The common room erupted into controlled chaos. What Kendall had assumed would be a terrified group of elderly victims transformed into a highly coordinated defense force. A former Navy SEAL named Harold trapped 3 pirates using nothing but furniture and a decorative rope from the curtains. Agnes, who'd spent 40 years as a combat medic, efficiently administered pressure points that left attackers conscious but completely immobilized. "I haven't had this much excitement since Tehran," Agnes said, dusting off her cardigan. Within 15 minutes, every member of Kendall's crew was subdued, tied up with yarn from the crafts closet, and seated in neat rows in the dining hall. The residents returned to their activities as if nothing had happened. Someone put on a pot of coffee. "Now then," Dorothy said, addressing the captured pirates with the same tone she'd once used to interrogate hostile assets, "let's discuss your poor life choices." Kendall sat in stunned silence. Her grand plan had collapsed faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. Roman looked equally bewildered, recognizing at least 4 other residents from various operations throughout his criminal career. "The ship," Dorothy continued, consulting with several other residents. "The SS Marauder's Edge, correct? Nice vessel, terrible name. We'll be confiscating it." "You can't just take our ship," Kendall protested. "Can't we?" Dorothy smiled. "Harold, you still remember maritime law?" Harold nodded. "Piracy, attempted robbery, trespassing. By my calculations, that ship is now legally forfeit. Plus, we've been wanting to organize a group outing. The old van barely fits 12 people." The residents murmured in agreement. Someone suggested painting the ship a cheerful blue. Another recommended adding a shuffleboard court on the deck. But, Roman sputtered. "But nothing," said Martha, returning from the kitchen with a tray of fresh cinnamon rolls. "You're welcome to have one before the police arrive. I don't believe in letting people go hungry." By 11:30 a.m., the local authorities had collected the bewildered pirates. By noon, the residents of Sunset Haven were aboard their newly acquired ship, debating whether to rename it the Golden Years or the Senior Moment. Dorothy stood at the helm, her knitting tucked safely in a waterproof bag. "I have to say," George commented, examining the ship's navigation equipment, "retirement was getting a bit dull." Agnes adjusted the sails with surprising strength. "Should we head to that new seafood restaurant everyone's been talking about? The one on the island?" "Excellent idea," Dorothy said. "We should be back before dinner. Tuesday is meatloaf night, and I refuse to miss it." As the ship sailed away from Sunset Haven, Kendall and her crew sat in police custody, trying to explain to increasingly incredulous officers how they'd lost their ship to a group of senior citizens before lunch. The story would become legendary in criminal circles, a cautionary tale about underestimating anyone based on age. Back at Sunset Haven that evening, The residents returned from their outing. The ship safely docked at the community's pier. They'd voted to keep it for future excursions. Dorothy resumed her knitting. Martha planned next week's menu, and Harold organized a sailing schedule. Same time tomorrow? Agnes asked. Absolutely, Dorothy replied. But let's aim for morning tea instead of lunch. The scones are better when they're fresh.